My name is Walter Briggs. I was 62 when the trouble began, older now and quieter where I can be. If you sit with me for a while, I'll tell you the one thing that carried me through the years. Paper remembers. It remembers when voices don't, when tempers flare, when the truth is asked to wait outside. Paper waits too, but it does not forget. They said I was violent. They said I snapped, and a deputy read those words off a report like he was selling them by the pound. While I sat on a metal bunk beneath a light that hummed like a hived bee, my daughter-in-law Vanessa and my son Mark opened the bottom drawer of my old oak wardrobe and took what my father had trusted me to keep, the paper share certificates from a company older than any man in our family. Heavy cream stock, borders like lace, serrated dividend coupons lined along the bottom like teeth. Each spring, I would tear off a coupon, take it to the post office with my ID, and come home with money that smelled faintly of ink and dust. Those certificates were more than money. They were a promise my father handed down without ceremony. Vanessa and Mark walked out of the house with them, and the house sounded different after that, as if a door had been left ajar in a room no one would enter again. I won't spend long inside the cell with you. A latch speaks loudly in any language. I made bail once, and the first thing I found in the mailbox was a mountain of anger printed in red. Debts I hadn't made, a court date no one told me about. I missed one hearing and went back in. Not for a crime, but for a bill. A man can be made poor quicker than he can even name the trick that did it. There was a boy in the middle of all this. He was 5 when I first went in, pockets full of marbles, laugh that shook the dust off the porch rails. Noah. 15 comes fast, 16 faster. At 16, a boy becomes a ledger, what he's been told on one side, what he's seen on the other. One afternoon, a letter found me. County stamp, blue ink, crease like a frown. Grandpa, are you a bad man? Noah, I read it twice and sat on the edge of the bunk, like the floor had lowered itself to meet me. I answered the only way I knew. Noah, I'm not a bad man. I won't speak against your mother or your father. I did what I knew to do for this family, sometimes poorly, sometimes stubbornly, always trying. If you want to write, I'll write back. If you don't, I'll still be proud you asked. Paper remembers. We'll start there. Grandpa Walter. He wrote on lined notebook paper, block letters neat as fence posts. Mom says the court decided, and that's the end. Is that true? Also, your signature. Do you always sign it the same way? I told him something small and true and kept the bigger things behind the door for the time being. When I was 19, I began my W with a little notch tucked under the first stroke. I have never signed without it. A signature is a promise. I did not drag him through my night. I did not say Vanessa out loud. I did not list certificate numbers or explain how quiet a bedroom becomes when someone walks off with your father's papers. I told him, instead, about people who still keep books, the barber with an inked appointment ledger, the clerk who loves her stamp pad, the old nurse whose metal file drawer complains when you open it. If you ever need the quiet kind of truth, I wrote, look where pages live. Noah started looking. He didn't break locks or stomp around kitchens. He looked at paper. There was a red accordion folder in his parents' hall closet labeled Taxes, Wash, Statements. He slid it out while the dishwasher hummed, and his parents talked 3 rooms away. Inside, bank statements, old check registers, deposit slips with carbons still clinging on. He noticed each spring carried deposits marked dividend, and those same days showed cashier's checks slipping out. He didn't pretend to understand. He copied dates and amounts into a school notebook and tucked the notes behind algebra problems like he was sheltering a bird. He walked to Lou's Barber, the shop where a calendar of trout and rivers fades in the sun, and asked to see June 17th. Lou's appointment book is heavy with hair and years. He turned the page with a finger thickened by time and read the line, 2:00 p.m., Walter Briggs, trim and beard. That was the day I was supposed to have shouted and struck someone. I remembered the talc, the towel warm around my neck, the line of hair falling from my ears to my shoulders like dark snow. He went to the county clinic and asked a question the quiet way twice. Mrs. Green, hair pinned while the world spins, slid open a metal file that groaned like a gate and found a blood pressure slip stamped June 17 with my name and her hurried signature. I have never been a poet, but a round rubber date stamp can look like mercy if you've been waiting long enough. Noah wrote me only a few lines. Grandpa, a man can't be in two places at once. If a judge sees that on paper, what happens? I told him what I hoped. If he's fair, he breathes and says, "Show me the page." Noah kept going. He stood in front of the corkboard at the post office and read a notice about dividend check cashing. Bring ID, we stamp the stub. He asked the clerk how long they kept money order stubs and the little slips they stamp. "Long enough," she said, and pointed to a drawer that smelled like dusty sunlight. Somewhere in that drawer, among other names and dates, lay stubs with Vanessa's signature on spring days that matched the bank's dividend entries. He found a furniture store receipt stapled to one statement, paid with a cashier's check on the same date a dividend walked in. He took it to the father of a friend, a man whose hands knew lumber by feel. The man said, "A single cashier's check is nothing. A pattern is a road." Noah was learning the town the way men learn fields, by fences and by shadows. He wrote to me about Carter & Sons Transfer, the old transfer office where share ownership lives in ink. "Do they keep a register?" he asked. I told him they did, and that every certificate bears a serial number, and that the register keeps a line for assignment when an owner endorses a share to someone else. "If those lines by my name are blank and the coupons are gone," I wrote back, "a judge can see a straight path to the truth." He brought our small stack to a woman who listens more than she speaks, Ms. Hargrove, a lawyer who prefers a fountain pen and straight edges. She promised no thunder. She promised to file what needed filing with the right staples in the right corners. "Petition for new trial based on newly discovered evidence," she said, and made it sound like a door where somebody finally oiled the hinges. The judge read Lou's book and then, out of habit, ran his finger along the line where my name sat. He read Mrs. Green's stamped slip and nodded like rain on tin. He read the bank statements and the dates circled in pencil. "Mr. Briggs," he said at last, "you should have had this before me a long time ago." He used a small word with muscle enough to carry a man outside. Acquitted. I came out into a light that startled me. You do not get years back. You get mornings. You get the sight of your own front steps. You get a boy who looks you in the face without flinching. For most men, if they're honest, that's plenty. Then the civil courtroom where shouting is replaced by stacking. Ms. Hargrove stacked what she had like plates on a Sunday table. The transfer register from Carter & Sons listing my certificate numbers under my name with the assignment lines blank. Post office stubs with Vanessa's name and the familiar spring dates. Bank entries that read like footprints. Dividend in, cashier's checkout. A furniture invoice settled by one of those checks. and the backs of the certificates where someone had tried to endorse them with a W that was smooth as a river stone. I have notched my W since I was 19. I told them that, and then I showed them. The judge looked at the table and spoke the way men speak about weather when they know what a cloud means. Return what can be returned. Account for what cannot. You cannot glue a coupon back on, but you can name who tore it and write restitution in a number that stands steady in the afternoon light. The court wrote it. And because false accusation had carried me into a cell and forgery had carried my father's papers out of my drawer, there were charges. I did not ask for them. The state brought them. Vanessa and Mark went where I'd been, behind a door that sounds the same no matter who it swallows. I will not pretend I cheered. When the lock caught, I sat at home and studied my hands like I'd never seen them before. A father can want justice and still hate the sound of a key turning on his child. Both things can be true in the same room. Years washed by. Noah worked at a hardware store where they let him cut keys and where the owner said he showed up early without a fuss. On Saturdays, he carried groceries up my steps. I taught him useful things: how to fold a map so it opens right, how to set a fence post straight, how to be on time without being loud. We kept him from being a banner in a family war. We let him be a grandson. That is work enough for a decent boy. One winter, so cold the air seemed poured from a tin cup, I wrote a letter and didn't mail it. I left it on the second shelf, right of the flour tin, where my mother's pencil recipes live. A letter on family son. Paper can bring justice. Mercy is a different paper. It has no seal, no stamp. A man writes it on his heart and signs it every morning. Your grandmother used to say there are two ways to be right: the way that makes another feel small, and the way that leaves a chair pulled out at the table. I have been the first kind too often. I am trying to be the second. Vanessa and your father took what wasn't theirs and said what wasn't true. The court answered that. But a family is not only a place where wrongs are counted. It is also a place where someone sets a bowl down and says, "Eat," even if he went hungry yesterday. I am going to do a strange thing. I am going to pay what the clerk requires so your father and Vanessa can step into the air. Not because they deserve it, because you do. A boy should not carry the sound of a key in his sleep. I will move to a new town. I will give the address only to you. I will meet you at the diner off Route 6, first Wednesday of the month, noon. 2 coffees, 1 apple pie, 2 forks. If anyone asks who we are, tell them the truth. Friends who like pie. Tell your father this: paper remembered me. Tell your mother this: the opposite of shame is not pride. It is being useful. If they want to be useful, I will let them. If they want to hate me, they will have to do it knowing I paid for their mourning. You don't have to understand today. You can be angry and still come for pie. I'll have a fork ready. Grandpa, I folded the letter and left it with the recipes. The next day, I stood before a county window where a woman named Dorothy keeps her hair as she pleases, and I paid the bond, the fines, the fees. Dorothy stamped paid in red and slid me a receipt heavier than paper has a right to be. I didn't say I forgave anyone. I said thank you and walked out under a sky that didn't look different and was. I packed 2 suitcases, gave my house key to a cousin who likes quiet, and drove toward Pines. Route 6 rises and falls like a breath. I rented a room with a porch big enough for 1 chair and a nail where you can hang a shirt to dry. I told no one but Noah. The first Wednesday came. and he walked through the diner door taller than the door expected. We didn't speak about court. We spoke about work and weather and the right way to ripen a tomato. Maggie, the waitress, set down an apple pie and asked, "2 forks?" Like we had invented a ceremony she admired. On the third Wednesday, he said, "Grandpa, they're out." I said, "I know." He asked, "Was it you?" I said, "It was a man who wanted a boy to sleep." The pie tasted like a decision. We ate it slowly. I heard bits of news the way you hear them in small towns. Vanessa at the post office asking about forms to register a cleaning business. Mark driving a delivery truck and keeping to himself. Pride is strange weather. It makes a man open an umbrella in sunshine and call it shade. I had done my part. The rest was not mine to supervise. In the spring, we stood at Lou's funeral. On a small table beside the guest book lay his appointment ledger, open to a June where his ink ran a little. A few boys laughed at the straight razors and the glass jars of blue liquid. Noah rested his hand on the ledger. "This is a man's life," he said. The boys quieted, like someone had closed a door softly. The county clinic put their metal files away and bought machines that beep if you press the wrong button. That is the world's right. But every Thanksgiving I take Noah to the post office and we stand before a small case where they keep an old canceled money order and a lineup of rubber date stamps that once could put Jun 17 in a circle on a slip and set a man on a different road. He laughs kindly when I get misty at a stamp. He's polite enough to let me be sentimental in public. Sometimes people ask me why I paid for Mark and Vanessa to step out, knowing what they had done. I have 2 answers. The short answer is Noah. The long answer is I want to live where a man is more than the worst thing he did. Paper told the truth. After that, I wanted to set a chair at the table, even if no one sat in it. There are untidy days. Some mornings I hold that paid receipt and feel a dull fury without lyrics. Some nights I wake to the sound of a key turning in a lock that isn't there. When that happens, I sit on the porch and let the pines count me back to myself. Once Noah said, "Mom asked if I see you." I asked what he told her. I told her I see a man who likes pie and quiet, and who taught my father to set fence posts straight. I laughed until my eyes stung, and told him that if he ever wanted to carve that on my stone, I wouldn't object. We keep a plain rhythm. First Wednesday, 2 coffees, 1 apple pie, 2 forks. If it rains, we sit by the window and watch the road shine. If it's hot, we sit under the fan and let our words be light. Once we talked about forgiveness the way men discuss a stubborn nail. Sometimes you change the angle. Sometimes you use a better hammer. Sometimes you leave the nail and learn to hang the picture a little to the left. I do not know what Mark tells himself in the half hour before sleep. I do not know how Vanessa arranges her story so it doesn't rattle in the drawer. I hope in their quiet, they are learning to be useful, to hand a glass of water to an old woman without being asked, to carry a box for a stranger. These are not heroics. They are repairs. Much of the good done in this world looks like a repair if you step back far enough. I keep the first letter Noah sent me in the drawer where the share certificates once lived. It's how I tell the house that what was taken has been replaced by something softer and stronger. When the sky bruises and the day lists to one side, I take the letter out and read. "Grandpa, are you a bad man?" I answer out loud because a man ought to hear himself tell the truth now and then. I'm a man. I'm trying. Paper remembers. So do I. Sometimes we drive after pie. Route 6 bends past fields set with fence posts, and we count them the way children count stars, softly, not minding if we miss one. We pass the skeleton of a barn that refuses to fall and a dip in the road where water gathers after rain. If the sun's right, it looks like a mirror. I tell Noah that when he sees a mirror, he should check his hat and his heart. He says he doesn't wear a hat. I say he knows what I mean. I have a habit now when the house is quiet. I take out a clean sheet and sign my name at the bottom, though there's nothing above it. I make the little notch under the WU and watch the line settle like a bird finding its branch. It comforts me to see that a mark I made as a boy became a rope thrown backward for an old man to catch. If you're holding a piece of paper while you listen, receipt, letter, postcard with a crooked stamp, be careful with it. It may not look like much. It may be the difference between a lie that lasts and a truth that endures. And if you're holding a grudge, set it down like glass in a room where someone you love is sleeping. On our last Wednesday before the holidays, Maggie brought the pie and said, "You two keep this place steadier than the clock." I told her that steadiness is the best thing two men can offer a world that shakes. She laughed like a person who has done the math on tips and mercy and found them to be the same currency. We stood to go, and the bell on the door said its small metal truth. Outside, the wind smelled of pine and wood smoke. I put my hand on Noah's shoulder, felt the solidness of a young man who has learned how to stand in his own weather, and I blessed him the only way I know how. Small, steady, meant. Justice, I have learned, draws a straight line. Mercy lets you walk it together. When folks ask where I live now, I tell them the true part. Down past the bend, near the pines. And when they ask who I see, I tell them the best part, a boy who grew up right. The rest is paper, ledgers, stubs, stamps, slips, a receipt with paid in red, and the quiet work of keeping it clean and reading it slow. Paper remembered me when voices did not. Paper and a grandson who believed it could.